Let us begin. This particular lesson was about transformation by loving ourselves and learning to expect good things to happen. Louise Hay started out this lesson by saying, we can refuse to think certain thoughts. And she said, look how often you have refused to think a positive thought about yourself. Well, you can refuse to think a negative thought about yourself also. It seems that everyone on this planet, she said, that she knows and she's worked with is suffering from self-hatred and guilt to one degree or another. The more self-hatred and guilt that we have, the less our life works. We find that we have an inability to speak up for ourselves, and we're always trying to please others. We hear talk about that here often. And we find that we might be angry, and sometimes we have resentments, and we might even be explosive. The less self-hatred that we have and guilt we have, the better. And I know some of you may not even think you have self-hatred, but I'd invite you to stay with the conversation tonight and just check it out for yourself. Louise said that our lives work on all levels. And she says this includes our health, the health of our body. And she said it's been her experience that the bottom line for everybody that she had worked with, and at that point she had worked with many hundreds of people, she said the bottom line is people don't really feel adequate or good enough about themselves. And I'm wondering on our Zoom call, because I know there's a lot of people signing in every week and then more on YouTube and Facebook, I'm wondering if the audience agrees with Louise on this. She's saying that most of us have insecurities of one kind or another, which are interfering with our success. You might ask yourself, reflect, is that true? Maybe you don't think you're insecure. She'll say, then she went on to say, many of us don't feel we're attractive or attractive anymore, and some of us don't feel we ever were. Maybe we find ourselves sometimes jealous of other people, or maybe feeling guilty about the way we are living or the way we're acting. Maybe we feel bad about what we have done in our friendships in the past. You know, I remember a song from years ago, words can be weapons, you know. Maybe some of us live with regrets or with sorrow or things we've said and done. People all over the globe are paralyzed in their minds over what they have done or what they have said or what they have failed to do. I have a friend, I can't name her name obviously, who is always lamenting that she was terrible to her mother. And this bothers her, you know, now it's probably 18, 20 years later. Louise Hay zeroed in on all this type of conversations, and she said she's counseled many, hundreds, and she concluded, most people simply do not feel good enough about themselves. So I'll throw that out to you all tonight. You can say whether it's true or not for yourself. And she said the reasons are all very different why they don't feel good, but the bottom line is the same. They don't really feel very great or wonderful about themselves. Most, if not all, have a degree of, you know, criticism going on, doubt, fear, and they don't have a very high opinion of themselves. And of course, if you get in the teaching of Science of Mind, we're here encouraging you to reach for the stars and to develop a much bigger, more expansive view of yourselves. And Louise was presenting that in her own way back in the late 80s with this book. She said, people just don't have a high enough opinion of themselves. And she commented, people feel guilty about so many things. We carry so much in the way of feeling down or inadequate. We don't, most of us speak of it. We act as if all is well. And, you know, in the teaching, we're encouraged to look past the conditions and act as all is well. But if there's stuff that's buried underneath, then it's also smart for us to unearth it. Louise then said, and we often add all of this, she said, they might be saying to themselves as they think about, I don't do enough for so-and-so, my mother, I don't do enough here, I don't do enough there. I just don't do enough, and I don't do enough for myself or for someone else. As I say these things, I'm sure different things are coming up for people in the extended audience. You've heard me talk about the part of the book where Louise Hay would ask us to imagine ourselves on a beach facing and approaching the ocean of life. And if you've read the book, I'm sure you've seen that passage before. And she's trying to educate us that life gives back to us what we can accept and what we can visualize. And I think she asked in that exercise, or suggested, that we're all carrying a cup, or we're carrying a container as we approach the ocean of life. And some of you will imagine a larger container than others, and some of our Sunday services we talk about we need to have bigger buckets. Because the whole thing is the universe will give to you according to what you will conceive in your own mind. If you think of yourself having a thriving, wonderful, successful life, and you really believe that, truly, the law of cause and effect, you'll bring that into your world. But Louise was trying to get us to see that life gives back to us according to what we can accept, what we can visualize, what we can believe. Many Sunday lessons and other lessons, I ask in them to creatively visualize ourselves with bigger buckets, bigger ideas, because the universe will always fill these ideas up if we have that kind of positive expectancy and faith. Now, if you're thinking, I don't deserve something, or I don't deserve someone, if that's where you're coming from, that's going to derail all these positive, the positive things you want. Louise asked, does this sound like you, where you're saying or implying or feeling that you're not good enough and you don't deserve? And if the answer is yes, that you don't feel adequate or good enough in some way, she says, then the things you're looking for, you're denying your own good. And she would ask you next, where does this come from? But for whom? According to whose standards are you living? And she mentioned maybe one of your parents had high or nearly impossible standards for you. And I can think of my own life, they had pretty high standards, very tough to live up to. And Louise said, and to this day, you might be trying to live up to them. Maybe you're in a relationship and you're trying to please someone endlessly, or get someone in your life to like you or approve of you. And see, that's the whole mechanism there, is you're being other referred. And what we would try to work with you to understand in this teaching is you've got to come back to loving yourself first and approving of yourself first. But people do this a lot. Now, if any of these negative beliefs are very strong in you, she said, how can you possibly then create a loving, joyous, prosperous, healthy life? You see, somehow your subconscious beliefs would always be contradicting your objectives or your goals, and making sure you don't obtain your goals. You're literally tripping yourself up. You might be claiming, I deserve this and I want this to happen, and you might be creatively visualizing it, but you don't believe that you deserve it. So that's what I mean, you trip yourself up with your consciousness, because if your consciousness is telling you this can't happen, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve, then your prayers go nowhere. So you need to be in alignment. Your words need to align with what you really believe, in the deeper part of yourself. These inner beliefs, our consciousness, will trip us up. Somehow we have to find a way to lift ourselves out of any negative conversation that's going on within us. So every Thursday, I ask the question, what's it been like being you? Louise maintained resentment, criticism, guilt, and fear cause more problems in our bodies and in our experiences than anything else. Think about it for a moment. Is there anyone you resent, or anything that really bothers you about someone or something? And make a mental note of it. Or is there some area in your life, as you think about it, that you feel guilty? Something you've said, something you've done, as you think about it up until now, and just again, make a note of it. This is a little bit like what people do in recovery programs, by the way. They do inventories. Just make mental notes. You don't have to do anything about it now, but just whatever comes up for you in this session tonight. If you have critical thoughts, make a note. Critical thoughts, especially if you have them about yourself or others. And if you feel guilty about anything, make a note or write it down. These are the kinds of things that hold us back. See, I might think I'm positive and I'm good and loving towards most people, but I might be hanging on to some things, and it's treacherous. It does you great damage. So, I've learned along the way, I want to try to be quick to forgive and quick to let go, because that stuff is like poison. It gets in the way of me demonstrating the kind of life I want to demonstrate. Louise said these are the kinds of things that hold us back. We don't need to fix them all at once, but we would like to become more aware of what we call our blind spots. Louise added, these feelings often come from our erroneous thinking and from blaming others and not taking responsibility for our lives. You see, if we are all 100% responsible for everything in our life, then there's nobody to blame for anything. Now, this might be difficult for people to accept, but when we stop pointing fingers and we stop talking about what people are doing and not doing, and we stop blaming, and then we start stating our experiences in a different way, everything will begin to change. Okay. Instead of talking about what someone has done to you, or what they've done, for example, you might start talking about what I allowed to happen. I allowed this to happen. I allowed that to happen. That's much different than saying, Joe did this, they did this to me, because that's a version of ain't it awful. If I can start to language it like, okay, I allowed this to happen, I allowed that to happen, that immediately puts you in a place of power, by the way. So if you can do that, what you've allowed or what experience you've had without blame, then you've come a long way in your healing process. One of my favorite metaphysical statements of all has been, you hear me use it quite often, in truth, there is nothing outside of you. And I can give you poem after poem that would flesh that out for you. In truth, there's nothing outside of you. So the whole world is really your oyster. It's a reflection of your consciousness. And we really want to get away from pointing the fingers and just start to, in our meditations, notice. In our affirmative prayer, notice. And we can change our thinking and we will change our life. If you can understand, in truth, there's nothing outside of you, you'll start to see that you're drawing to yourself the perfect people and the perfect situations for your learning and growth. And people are in different places. We're all evoluting along. Some people are capable of doing all kinds of things that you're not capable of doing at this point in your life. And you're not here to blame them, but you're here to notice, because you allow certain things in. And you want to start saying, I allow, rather than what's been done into you, right? So we do not want to live our lives as victims. And once we learn a lesson, you really get it, you don't have to go back and experience it again and again. You can say no to whatever was the cause or whatever drew the lesson to you before. You don't have to keep repeating it. I know I've used this line in different self-esteem classes to help people step out of the victim mentality, where we suggest it's never really about the other person. When you talk about other people as being wrong, or when you're talking about other people with the idea of blame, it's not going to be very productive or helpful to you. Whatever is happening out there is only a mirror of our own inner thinking and consciousness. We give you suggestions every week, stop watching, endless hours of news, stop focusing on problems. Try to start to focus on what's good in the world and what's good in you, and let that become the thing that's amplified in your life. Please understand also, and this came from Louise directly, that we're never condoning other people's poor behavior. But once we really grasp what Louise was teaching, and what our founder Ernest Holmes was teaching. Virtually every thought the author is saying is, it's our beliefs that attract to us people, okay? You know, the people who are in your life are not there by accident. It is our beliefs that attract us to people that will treat us a certain way. And so if situations are awful and things aren't to your liking, you know, we work on the internal level. You know, we work by saying, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. As you really learn to love yourself, the outer world starts to shape up. Some of these people who have been problems to you start to change, or mysteriously they seem to disappear from your life, or they show up as different. If you find yourself saying, everyone always does such and such, or everyone always criticizes me or ignores me or takes advantage of me or even abuses me, then Louise would suggest that this is your pattern. There is something in your thought that seems to draw to you these types of experiences or these types of folks. On some internal level, and I wouldn't know where it came from, except I always go back to our youth. On some internal level, you believe you deserve to be treated this way, or you treat other people this way, and it's coming back to you. Whatever we give out mentally, physically, verbally, comes back to us. When we no longer think, you know, in terms of in a negative way, if we really learn to be the lifters that we can be in this teaching, and the encouragers, when we no longer think or behave in a certain way, people start to change their behavior. Or they will go on and do that to someone else who believes they deserve it. You will stop attracting the experiences that you say you do not want. Whether we want to change a life experience or a physical problem, the place to begin is to say, to yourself, right? You say, I'm willing to release the pattern within me that's creating this experience, this condition. You can say this to yourself over and over and over again. I release the need for this. I release this pattern. I release the need to be critical. I release the need to blame. I release the need to be negative. You know, you work with your own conversation. And you could say with me now tonight, I am willing to release the pattern in me that has created this condition. See, that's a much more powerful thing than be talking about what somebody's done to you. You say, I am willing to release the pattern in me that has created this condition or drawn this condition to me. The minute you say this affirmation, you're stepping out of a victim role. You're no longer helpless. You're acknowledging your own power. You're saying, I may not understand it, but somehow I'm beginning to understand that I am contributing to creating this problem. And now I take my own power back, and I am releasing it, and I'm letting it go. What a powerful statement to have your subconscious mind support. You say, I may not understand it, but somehow I am beginning to understand that I've contributed to creating this problem. I now take my power back, and I'm releasing it, and I'm letting the situation go. As I said, resentment of others, criticism of ourselves or others, guilt over the past, fear of any kind are the most damaging mental thought patterns we can have. This kind of internal dialogue, which I ask you about every week, what's it been like being you? Whatever that dialogue is, we want to have it, we try to lift it up, right? Because if it's negative, this kind of internal dialogue creates and maintains and contains dis-ease, right, in our body. These thoughts, you know, that we habitually think can destroy us. They can destroy our body. They can contribute to just about every one of the physical symptoms that are listed in Louise Hay's book. Criticism is the one she focused on. She says, as a permanent habit, and you know if you're critical, you're using the word should all the time, and you have the last word and first word about everything. You have to be right and all that stuff. Criticism as a permanent habit can often lead to many things, arthritis in your body, and you know if it's critical and there's resentment, you can be inviting diseases like cancer and other autoimmune diseases. Louise next said, guilt, if you're always feeling guilty, it's looking for punishment, and it creates painful situations and pain in your body. We don't need this stuff, right? We don't need any more anger. I remember a 12-step program 42 years ago said, the universe's will for me is to be happy, joyous, and free. What a simple statement that is, but how true it is too. We don't need this anger. We don't need to have all these states of consciousness that are self-destructive. We have a teaching that talks about learning to live the affirmative life. So the instruction's very clear from Ernest Holmes and Louise. Hey, you just keep looking for the good in everything. Let your sights be high. Hitch your wagon to that star where your intention is to see the good in everything. It doesn't matter that the rest of the world is seeing what's awful and they're glued to cable news. You're here, life is brief, and you're here to see the good. And if you're preoccupied with seeing the good, if that's your preoccupation, you're going to open up avenues in mind where you're going to step right into the world where good will be all around you. The kingdom of God is at hand. You've heard that said all your lives. It is here, but you can't see it if you're focused on seeing what's wrong. So when we can learn to love and accept ourselves right now without any criticism or judgment, then we are truly loving ourselves, and the negative patterns must go away. They must dissipate, disappear, dissolve. If you just stay focused on loving ourselves and giving out love and really having compassion for other people when they're screwing up, because God knows we've all screwed up ourselves. If we wait until we have everything right, have all the things we want before we love ourselves, if we wait, she said, until we lose weight or until someone else loves us before we love ourselves, she says, then we're denying our existence right now as spiritual beings. If we wait until we become perfect to love ourselves, she said, we're wasting our precious lives, which are speedily going by. We're already the perfect outer expressions of our inner understanding. And we will change. We're all changing week by week, day by day. But the changes we make when we love and accept ourselves are always positive. So let's release any discontent, any need to complain. Let's release the need to blame and be angry and all the negative beliefs and similar ideas. Let's release the need to criticize ourselves, and let's release the need to criticize others, because we do know everyone is where they are by right of consciousness. So we want to move towards loving, accepting, and approving of ourselves in the here and now. We are always unfolding in the best way we can, though sometimes we don't believe that. We think it's where we are is not good enough, but you're really in the right place at the right time. The knowledge and the understanding that you are already incorporating from this lesson tonight will help you to change your life and dissolve negative patterns. No negative condition can remain in our lives when we truly love ourselves and accept ourselves. Love is, she said, the healing power. It dissolves anger. It gets rid of guilt. Love fades away fear. And love for ourselves is the power that heals us. When we were very little, we learned how to feel about ourselves and about life by the reactions of adults around us, maybe in our older brothers and sisters. But if you lived, Louise commented, with frightened people or people who were very unhappy or miserable, then you learned a lot of negative things about life and about yourself, and you may still believe them. However, this isn't to blame our parents or the people who raised us, because everybody, she said, are victims of victims, meaning they were raised by people who passed on what they could, the best of what they knew. And they could only pass on to you what they knew. As an example, she said, if your mother did not know how to love herself, or your father did not know how to be gentle and kind, then it would be impossible for them to pass any of that on to you, to be gentle and kind and loving. Your parents, again, were doing the best that they can with what they had been taught. Louise believed that we choose our parents. Now, you don't have to believe that. but that was her belief. And each of us, she thought, decides to come into this world at a certain point in time, time and space, because she said, we've chosen to come into this world to learn a particular lesson that so she thinks that you're choosing the family, the time, and all of that, and you're choosing according to your need to advance in your own spiritual evolutionary path. Whether that's true or not, it's something to think about. She thought we look around for a particular set of circumstances that will mirror the patterns that we are bringing to work into our own life. Often, when we grow up, we point our fingers accusingly at our parents, and we complain, well, they did this to us. And she said, but really we chose them because they were perfect for what we were here to overcome and what we're here to learn. As very little children, we learned our belief system, and then we moved through life creating experiences to match our beliefs. Then the suggestion was, look back in your own life and notice how often you have gone through the same experience, or you've been involved in the same kind of relationship or the same kind of job, and it's like a pattern. She said, well, I believe you created those experiences over and over because they mirrored something within you that you thought was true about yourself. And it doesn't matter how long we've had this problem or how big it is or how threatening it is, you're here to work through it and resolve it. And then she said what we all hear every week here, the point of power is always in the present moment, which means that you have experienced everything you've experienced during your life up until this moment, you have created by your own thoughts and beliefs coming from the past. However, whatever you're choosing to think and believe and say right now, today, right here and now, is creating your future. So you could end it all and start anew. Raymond Charles Barker always would say, yesterday ended last night. The 12-step programs would say it's never too late to start your day over, and you could do so tonight. You could say, okay, look, I'm creating my own life. I don't like the way it's going. I'm going to release all this stuff, and I'm going to definitely be committed to more positive thinking, and I'm going to do my affirmative prayer, and I'm going to influence the outcome, because life is going to respond to you, what you really believe. So if your current internal dialogue is definitely creating your tomorrow, your week, your next week. So if you know that's true, then you come to the obvious conclusion. You know that your thinking is creating everything. So do you want the thoughts that you've been thinking this week to be creating your future? Again, my question every Thursday night, what's it been like meeting you? Are your thoughts negative? Are they positive? And my suggestion always is just notice, just be aware. You don't criticize yourself for having negative thoughts, but just notice. And then begin to challenge the negative ones and replace them, right, with positive ones. Louise said, and I repeat, she said, I'm not trying to create guilt for anyone or to make anyone wrong. I'm making us aware of what's going on inside of us. Many of us who create illness and disease are in fact totally out of touch with what's going on in our minds and our bodies. We only notice our bodies when we become ill or in pain, or oftentimes that's the only time we notice them. If we do not know what's going on inside of us, how can we ever change? No matter what the problem is, the only thing we're ever dealing with is a thought. And a thought can be what? You know the answer. No matter what the problem is, the only thing you're dealing, I'm tripping about this. In other words, I'm obsessed about something. And no matter what it is, she'll say, we're only dealing with a thought, and a thought can be changed. You have the power to turn anything around. You don't always realize that, but you do. All of our experiences are just outer effects of an inner dialogue. The inner dialogue is the thing that happens first, and then the outer experiences happen second. So, you can head off a lot of problems in your life once you start to get this inner dialogue, I'll say under control, once you learn how to master it, once you learn how to elevate your consciousness and start to live affirmatively and practice this teaching. Even self-hatred is only hating a thought or a series of thoughts that you have about yourself. You may have a thought that says, I'm a bad person, I've done disgusting things, and they really knew me, blah, blah, blah. This thought produces a feeling like you're not worthy or good. And if you accept this feeling is true, then you start creating all that. However, if you eliminate the thought, you won't have the feeling. Feeling and thoughts can be changed. Change the thought and the feeling must go. In recovery years ago, they used to say, our feelings follow our thoughts. Well, if I have a lot of stinking thinking going on all the time, then, I'm going to not be feeling pretty good. And then, I'm going to start manifesting a lot of stuff that, I wouldn't want to wish on myself. Believe it or not, we do choose our thoughts, said Louise. We may habitually think the same thing over and over, so often that it doesn't even seem like we're choosing a thought. But we did make the original choice, and we keep repeating it. And she said, we can refuse to think certain thoughts. You can literally change the channel. Imagine you're watching something on TV, it's just full of negativity. You can change the channel. You can do the same thing with your own mind. Look how often you have refused to think a positive thought about yourself. We have lots of suggestions. Occasionally, go in the mirror and give yourself a nod. Make a positive statement. I love, accept, and approve of you exactly as you are. And mean it. Bring yourself to a point of belief. So you can refuse to think a negative thought about yourself. She said, it seems to me that everyone on this planet I know I've ever worked with is suffering from self-hatred and guilt to one degree or another. And the more you have, of the negative stuff, the less your life works. We find we have an inability to speak up for ourselves, and we're always trying to please others. Or we might be angry or explosive or reactive far too often. The less self-hatred and guilt we have, the better our lives work on all levels. This includes the health of our body and everything else. And then she moved into stress for a moment, and she said, let's talk about stress and being stress-free. This is the moment in which you are either enjoying or not enjoying your life. What you are thinking now is creating the way you will feel in your body this evening and tomorrow and in the next few days. If you're stressing yourself out all over every little thing, and you're making mountains out of molehills, you're never going to find inner peace. We talk a lot about stress. Everyone seems to be stressed out of late over something. It seems to be a buzzword, and we use it to the point where she said, I think it's a cop-out. Where you say, I'm so stressed, or this is stressing me, stress, and more stress. And she commented, I think that stress is a fearful reaction to life's constant changes. It's a bit of an excuse we often use for not taking responsibility for our own feelings. Now, if we can put the blame out there on anybody or something, then we can just play the role of the innocent victim. But being the victim doesn't make us feel good, and it doesn't change the situation. Often we are stressing ourselves because we have our priorities mixed up. Many of us feel that, like money, for example, money is the most important thing, but it's not true. There is something far more important and precious to us without which we could live. And she suggested it's our breath, breathing in, breathing out. Our breath is the most precious thing in our life, and yet we totally take for granted when we inhale and exhale that our breath will be there. If we didn't take another breath, we wouldn't last 3 minutes. Now, if the power that created us has given us enough breath to last as long as we shall live, can we not trust that everything else we need will also be there? When we trust life to take care of us and all of our little problems, then stress just melts away. You don't have to waste time on negative thinking or emotions, because that only creates more of what you don't want. So we've got to find a way to change the channel on this stuff and replace the negative patterns with life-giving patterns. If you're doing some positive work, some affirmative living, some affirmations, and you're not getting the results you want, then check to see how often during the day you allow yourself to feel bad and to feel upset. Just check it out. If you're dwelling in these places, these emotions are probably exactly what's frustrating you and delaying the manifestation of your affirmations and stopping the flow of your good. The next time you realize how stressed out you are, ask yourself, what is scaring you? Stress is just fear. It's that simple. You don't need to be afraid of life or afraid of your own emotions. Find out what you are doing to yourself that's creating this fear. Your inner goal is always going to be joy, harmony, and peace. Harmony, of course, is being at peace with yourself. It's not possible to have stress and inner harmony at the same time. When you are at peace, you do one thing at a time. You don't let things get to you. You refuse to be offended. If you're feeling stressed, do something to release the fear. Maybe take some deep breaths, maybe do some affirmations, maybe go for a brisk walk. Remind yourself that I am the only power in my world, and I have the ability to create a peaceful, loving, joyful day and life. Do you want to move? You want to move. The goal is to move through life feeling safe, right? Don't give up. Don't give words like stress a lot of power. Don't use it as an excuse either to create tension in your body. Nothing, no person, place, or thing has any power over you. And that's probably something very big to remember, that there's no person, no place, or thing that has any power over me. Next idea is really important. You could do a whole lesson around it. You are the only thinker in your world, and it's your thoughts that are creating your life. So train yourself to think positive thoughts, affirmative thoughts. Use your affirmations. If you're stuck, call a practitioner, call one of us. Because really what you want to do is you want to lift your thoughts up as high as you can and maintain them as much as you can. And you won't do it perfectly, but you begin again and you keep beginning again. Train yourself to think thoughts that make you feel good. That way, you will always be creating your life out of joy and in joy. Joy always brings more joyous experiences about. Fear comes from not trusting the process of life to be there for you. You know, the most precious thing in life is our breath, as I said. If you did not take another breath, you wouldn't be here for long. Now, if the power that created us, Louise said, has given us enough breath to last all our days, can we not begin to trust that the rest will be provided for us? I think at this point, this is about halfway through her seminar, it'd be a good place to break. Maybe we can pick this up again. So I'm always talking about the conversation, and I know my challenge in life, since I've been on this pathway for a few decades, is to keep practicing. When I go down and when I forget, and there's that saying from one of her songbooks, remembering and forgetting, it's the game that we play. So the reason I tune in every week, the reason I present this information every week is because I need to keep it fresh in my own mind as well. Remembering that we're supplied and supported. I want to remember to plug into the truth. I want to remember that I'm supplied and supported. And I want to also know that I'm responsible for my life. So nobody saves us except for us. And then we save ourselves by coming back to the realization that we are one with this one power. It's in us, operating through us. And no matter what's in front of us that looks scary or awful, we are greater than it. I put on a website I created a long time ago, the conditions in your life don't have consciousness. So whatever it is, it doesn't have consciousness, you have consciousness. Your consciousness might have brought things to you, but your present day consciousness can also push it all away, can neutralize it, heal it, and create a whole different experience. Ernest Holmes, our founder, author of the book, said, there's power, immense power for good in the universe, and you can use it. See, we are individualizations of this one power, and we have the ability to heal, we have the ability to transform our lives. We have the ability to see and know that there's good or God at hand in each and every moment. And so it is.